All right, it's Adam from Edge. So far we've talked about application compatibility and the application compatibility toolkit and the ability that it gives you to find out what apps you have in your environment and which ones are going to run on Windows 7. So the big question from there is, what do I do with applications that we've built in-house or somebody built for us that aren't supported by some other third party? What do we do if we want those to run on Windows 7? So to answer that question, I brought in one of my colleagues, Yochay. He does the same thing I do, but he talks specifically to developers. So I'll just put the question to you. I've got these applications, they don't run on Windows 7, now what do I do?
That's a great question, Adam. There are a few things that you can do.
Okay.
If you have any access to the source code, and you have the resource to actually go and fix any compatibility problems that you have with application running on Windows 7, then you absolutely should try and fix those.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing is to try fix the problem, the core problem. That may other solution that we can talk about may not be applicable in next versions. But fixing the code probably will resonate a long time.
Okay. Now I'm not a developer, I'm not going to fix the code myself, but what are the resources I would point my developers at to find out how to make their code compatible?
Right. So there is on MSDN there is a Windows compatibility page.
Okay.
And there is a very prescriptive way of steps to what to do in order to fix your application.
Okay.
Like step 1, check these major bugs like version checking, UAC, and etc. Go through the specific list of what to do, what to check, and how to fix. And we got the cookbooks as well. We got the Windows Vista cookbook, and then we got a Windows 7 cookbook. A lot of the compatibility of Windows 7 are actually Windows Vista related.
Okay.
So it makes sense to read both cookbooks.
Okay. So let's take the other scenario. I don't have the source code. I've got this application, it's mission critical, or maybe we've got the source code but nobody knows how to read it anymore because we've been using the app for years.
Yes.
I've heard about shimming. Is that my other answer?
So if there's any other option, it doesn't work for you, you can fix, you can make it work. Your last resort would be shims.
Okay.
And shims basically are, you can imagine them as a piece of code or something that is running somewhere close to your application. And when your app is doing some native calls or some calls for the OS, like, hey, what's the version, what's the registry key, what's the file path, and so forth. And we can intercept those calls and redirect them. And for example, for version shims, so if you need to run on, if you're on your application only runs on XP, and it checks for the specific version, so we can shim your app, and when your application asks the OS what's the current version, we can return the 5 point something instead of the 6 that we're running on 7 and Vista on 7.
Okay, so we're tricking the application.
We are tricking the application.
Because it may be doing a version, it may be checking to see if I'm on XP. It doesn't really require XP, but for whatever reason,
right,
the way the code was written, it just looks for XP, and that's the only thing it wants to run on.
Exactly.
Okay. You mentioned Windows version. What are some of the other things that we can fix with shims?
So there are literally hundreds of shim. You can do registry shims, you can do file access shims, UAC obviously run as admin or not. You can do other privileges shim, you have a high DPI. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of different shims that are available to you as developers that you can apply, as IT and developers that you can apply to your application.
Okay. And tell me how I do that. How do I build a shim and how do I get it on my Windows 7 machine?
So in the application compatibility toolkit, there is a compatibility manager, which is basically a large database of all the available shims. So Windows 7 ships with a bunch of shims, right? There are hundreds of shims.
We give you a bunch in the box. Okay.
Yes. And we even shim application, probably without even people knowing that. I mean, companies are aware of that, we let them know, but users don't really care.
Right.
So there are a bunch of shims in the box, and with the application compatibility toolkits, you have a bunch of other shims. They're all in this technically a big database of all the shims and all the apps that you shim.
Okay.
And then with that database, basically you can even install that on different machines. There is a SB something inst that you can command that you can initiate from the toolkit that will actually deploy that compatibility database.
Okay, so we give you those tools. We give you the tools to create the shims. Part of the app compat toolkit, we give you the tools to deploy those to your machines.
Right, so you can apply a shim to your app, and you can set a specific configuration. There's also a way to develop a shim, but this is much more complex.
Okay. So sounds like our best first choice is fix the app if we can.
Yes,
But if we can't, shimming is available, and we've got some pretty good resources for how to do that.
exactly.
All right, sounds pretty good. Thanks, Yochay.
Sure, thank you very much, Adam.
So this is the first of a couple of videos around application compatibility. Obviously, this one talks about what to do if you can fix your app. Another video available that tells you about the other options, things like XP mode, MedV, and some of the other virtualization solutions available if you just can't get an app to run, or you're not able to shim it or something like that. We've got another video that explains what some of your other remediation options are. Thanks.